Hello, welcome to Reading with Mo and part one of what's probably going to end up being like a 16-part series where we deep dive and look at all the books I have on my shelves, one shelf at a time. So the plan for today is to show you guys all of the books that are currently on my pink bookshelf, which is why, I also have these books. Some of them I have read, some of them I haven't. So we're going to go through each one. I'm going to show you the covers of them, let you know really quickly what they're about, nothing too lengthy, hopefully. Also, these are the books that I'm going to be choosing as part of my January TBR. So if you're only interested in knowing what books that I'm going to be reading in January, I will leave a timestamp here. You can go ahead and skip to that part of the video if all you're interested in knowing about is the books I'm going to be reading this month. First, we're just going to go really into the shelf and explore these books, and then I'll let you guys know which ones I'm going to be reading. I guess we'll start off with my newest edition, since it's the one right on top here, and it's probably one of my most beautiful ones on this shelf, and that is McSweeney's number 63. So this I actually did a little bit of research on. I purchased it recently at Barnes & Noble, and it's part of a quarterly literary journal, so I'm excited to get to this one. I'll let you guys know this is probably one I'm going to try and get to this month because it is a quarterly journal. If I do enjoy the stuff I read in here and I feel like it's really good, then I may end up subscribing either to this journal, or I may just, pick up the new issues whenever I happen to be at Barnes & Noble. So this book is a short story collection. Haven't read it, obviously, since I just purchased this, and it has really cute pink end papers and stuff, and there's actually some illustrations in here too. So I'm interested to see this. It's very mysterious to me and it's very intriguing. So I guess we'll start on this end and just work our way over to through the books that are on this list. So first we have a Folio Society edition book. I actually purchased this book used, I believe, on like eBay. I haven't read it yet. It's a memoir of Jane Austen by her, I believe it's her nephew. What was his name? J.E. Austen Lee. This book is gorgeous, beautiful, which I'm gonna stop saying because I could say that about all the books, I'm sure, on this pink shelf. I have had this book for a while, but my plan was not to read it until I had finished reading all of Jane Austen's works, which I think I just have like one or two more that I'm trying to get to, and then I'll go ahead and read this one. I think that the silhouette profile on this one is very nice. Next we have the only other Folio Society edition that's also on this shelf, and it's called Gentlemen Prefer Blondes by Anita Luce. I definitely love Folio Society books. There's so many that I still want to buy, but I'm just like holding off indefinitely for now because they are a little bit more pricey. So this one I don't really know too much about. To be honest, I can't tell you guys. I just really bought it because I loved the cover, and also there is a pink sprayed edge on one side. Next we have another classic, and this one I have read. It's Little Women by Louisa May Alcott. This is the what's it called? V&A William Morris collection, illustrated and designed by Liz Catchpole. I think this is very gorgeous. I haven't actually even watched the new latest adaptation of Little Women, but I have to soon. I have read this book, I believe, once or twice before. It's been a while, but it's definitely one that I feel like I'll probably get around to rereading again, probably just not anytime soon. Next we have the classic Madame Bovary by Gustave Flaubert. This classic I haven't read. I hope to get to it soon. This is the Arcturus Collection edition. I don't really want to know too much about this classic before I go into it, because it is kind of like more well known and stuff, and luckily like I actually did honestly get spoiled about one of the things that happened in this only a few days ago, so I almost made it to reading the book without knowing the spoilers. Then we have one I have read, which is Transcendent Kingdom by Yagyazi. This one is the Book of the Month edition. It was like one of the only ones I could find that didn't have those ugly stickers on the front. This one was a great book. I didn't enjoy it as much as the other book that Yagyazi wrote, which was Homegoing. But in this one we're following a PhD student, and it's very like science heavy and kind of like faith-based as well. I read this book, I believe, when it came out in 2020, and I gave this one 4 stars. Next we have a book of poetry, which is the selected poems of Emily Dickinson. I have not really gotten on well with poetry over the years. It's very more of the hit and miss. It's very more miss for me. I don't know if it's just because I haven't really like educated myself enough on how to read poetry, or it's just not really something that I'm into, which is also a possibility. This edition is from Chartwell Books of Emily Dickinson's books. I believe I picked this one up at Half Price Books a year or two ago, mainly because I just loved how it looked. But I feel like I do want to give her a try and see if maybe I am into her poetry or not. Then we have a young adult novel by Mary H.K. Choi. It's Emergency Contact. This one I also read a few years ago. I enjoyed it. I believe I gave it 4 stars. We're following a young teenager as she heads into college. And I really enjoyed this at the time. I'm not sure if I were to reread it, how much I would like it now. I kind of feel the same way about this and about Girl in Pieces by Kathleen Glasgow, which I know I read this one quite a few years ago. I remember I read this one, I think when I was on vacation in Hawaii. And these are both young adult novels that I really enjoyed reading at the time, but like I'm not sure if they would hold up to a reread if I were to enjoy them still. So I'm kind of like hesitant to read these, but not this month, but eventually I would like to get around to rereading both of these to see if I still want them to be taking up room on my shelves or not. And especially with Girl in Pieces, I ended up giving this book 5 stars at the time that I read it, so I am curious to see if that 5-star read would hold up for me. Next we have a nonfiction book, and that is Mad and Bad by Be a Coach. I believe I read this one last year, and this book looks at the lives of different heroines that lived during the Regency era. I ended up giving this nonfiction book 4 stars when I read it. And we have another classic. This one is a children's classic, and it's just so adorable and cute. It's The Railway Children by E. Nesbit. This book came out in 1906. This is a children's classic. We're following the story of 3 well-mannered siblings and how their lives are changed one evening when 2 men take their father away. The edition that I have here, this is the Puffin Classics edition. Sorry if my lighting is kind of weird. The sun is coming in and out, and I'm trying to make sure that it's not too like overexposed so you guys can actually see what I'm talking about pretty clearly. The next book we have is an essay collection, and this is written by Athena Dixon, and it's called The Incredible Shrinking Woman. It's a very short essay collection. I read this one I believe last year too. This was a 4-star read for me, and these essays were the debut collection from the author, and she is talking about growing up as a Black woman in a small Midwestern town. Next, we have a book by an author that I know has had a lot of controversy around her, and that is Fangirl by Rainbow Rowell. I read this book in probably like 2013, 2014, and I gave it 5 stars at the time, and that was like a lot of years ago. So I don't know how this book would hold up the same with a reread. Like I said, I need to take some of these books that I did enjoy a long time ago and read them and see if I still feel the same way. But at the same time, I'm kind of scared to reread these books because then maybe it'll ruin the memories and the enjoyment that I had for them at the time. This one, I believe I picked up at Costco, and it was the like collector's edition, and I think all that was added to it was like there's some like fan art that's on the end papers, and there's like a book ribbon that is attached to the book. Next we have Girl by Edna O'Brien. The cover on this is just perfection in my opinion, and it's definitely doesn't give though the vibe, I would say for sure, of what's going on, because this is actually a very sad and terrifying book. This book follows the story of a young woman who in Nigeria was abducted by Boko Haram. I believe she was part of the school. I think this is a fictionalized telling. Definitely a lot of content and trigger warnings for this book. It's one I do want to reread again and see how my feelings hold up onto this book and if I still want to keep it on my shelves or not. Kind of the same goes for this next book I'm going to show you guys, which is Girl Boss by Sophia Amoruso. I read this book quite some time ago. I want to say at least like 5-6 years ago, and I remember I really enjoyed it at the time. I watched the Netflix adaptation of it, or like the fictionalized adaptation of it. I forget what that, I think it was called Girl Boss too. I don't know what my original rating of this book was because on Goodreads I just marked it as I read it, but I know that at the time it was very inspirational to me, especially as someone who was just working part-time and didn't really know what they wanted to do with their lives career-wise. I felt like it was very much inspiring to be your own boss and go after your own dreams. So I just don't know if I were to read this again, if it would really hold that much value for me. So I just need to reread some of these books because I don't know if I want to keep all these on my shelves anymore. Then we have a book that I have not read, and it's also like a modern classic, I believe, and it's A Portrait of the Artist as a Young Man by James Joyce. This is the Vintage Classics edition. This I don't really know too much about. I just know it's one of those classics that a lot of people reference to sometimes, and I really haven't been spoiled for anything that's happened in this book, and it's one I plan to eventually get to, but it's not so much of a priority. Next we have a nonfiction book called Eggshell Skull by Bree Lee. This book I remember I gave like 5 stars when I read it. This book was really good. It's one that I feel like will definitely hold up to my rating. I can't wait to reread it again, even though it was a harder book to read. The subject matter is definitely very sensitive. She is a judge's associate and she's working in the Australian legal system. First, she was the daughter of a policeman, and then she was a law student, and finally she was like a judge's associate. And she is witnessing justice trying to be had for women, and then she ends up going into court for her own sexual violence case. So definitely trigger warnings for those types of topics. If that's something that is harder for you to read, I definitely wouldn't recommend this book because it is very detailed in things that happen. But I believe that it was just really well written, and it's just one on the topic that I would definitely recommend. Next we have another book that I don't know what my reading for it was at the time because I wasn't using Goodreads. I just have it marked as read, but it was Snowflower and the Secret Fan by Lisa C. This book I repurchased because I do eventually want to read it again. I don't remember when I read this book. It had to have been at least like 5-6 years ago. Next we have another one that I have read, and that is Alice in Wonderland by Lewis Carroll. This is the Wordsworth edition, which is definitely very beautiful. I actually have another edition of Alice in Wonderland I'll show you guys, and it's the Penguin Classics. I actually purchased this one. This one is on a different shelf, but if I had the room I probably would have put it on here because there is pink and white on this book. And this is, like I said, the Penguin Cloth Bound Classics edition. So I do have 2 editions of this book, but this one is just Alice in Wonderland. This one also is Adventures in Wonderland and Through the Looking Glass. I know that the story of Alice in Wonderland is definitely a really big children's classic. It's a book that has a lot of people's hearts, and I liked the book, but I think I came to it too late in life where I just didn't enjoy it as much as I would have if I had connected with the story as a kid. But even as a kid, like I wasn't even super into the Alice in Wonderland adaptation by Disney, but I had never read the book, so I ended up reading it as an adult. I think it is a cute children's classic, but I believe I gave this book 3 stars when I read it. I would be interested in reading it again at some point in the future to see if my feelings changed or not with the book, but for now this was just a 3-star read for me, but it's so beautiful that I definitely want to keep it on my shelf still. Next we have Severance by Ling Ma. This one was like a post-pandemic book, and we're following this millennial as she's like still working even though the world is basically over. And I enjoyed my time reading this book. I gave this one 4 stars. Then we have the only book by Shakespeare on this bookshelf entirely. I have never really been into Shakespeare, but lately I kind of have been having this little urge that I want to try some of his stuff. So I picked up this book from Half Price Books. As you can see, I still have the price sticker on here, and this one is The Taming of the Shrew. I've read some like excerpts of some of his plays, I believe, that were required reading when I was in school, but other than that I have not, just of my own free will, picked up any William Shakespeare. So I'm interested to see if it's something I would be into or not. Next we have this beautifully sprayed edged book. It's Valley of the Dolls. This is the 50th anniversary edition, written by Jacqueline Susan. At a time when most women's goals in life were to become a housewife, Jacqueline Wilson brought this book about, where we're following some ambitious young women who moved to New York City to make lives for themselves. And I've really been wanting to get to this one, so maybe I'll have to prioritize it for this month. Next we have The Grace Year by Kim Liggett. I haven't read this one. I just checked out the audiobook from my library. This is a young adult novel, and we're following this world where when women turn 16, then they have to be banished to the wild for a year so that they can be purified and ready for marriage. And our main character, she's just not feeling all that, so I feel like she's going to somehow turn this around. The end papers on this actually are really pretty. So yeah, I have the audiobook for this, so hopefully this is one that I'll get to this month. I also have the audiobook for this book, which is Blow Your House Down by Gina Frangello. I haven't read this one yet. I received this one from Counterpoint Press as an advanced copy, and I just haven't gotten around to reading it yet. I thought it was like a regular novel, but then it's called because it says a story of family, feminism, and treason. But when I was kind of starting to read it, it kind of seemed like it was almost like essays or short stories or stuff, so I'm not exactly sure how to describe this book, but I'll let you know once I read it. Next we have Age of Iron by J.M. Coetzee. Now this book is a very tiny book, so hopefully it won't take me long to read because I haven't read it yet. And in this one, it takes place in Cape Town, South Africa. We're following Mrs. Kieran, a dying classics professor, writing to her daughter in America. Having quietly opposed apartheid all her life, she's suddenly confronted with its true horrors. So this one's been sitting on my shelves for a while, so hopefully I can get to this soon. We have another classic. This one is The Adventures of Sherlock Holmes by Arthur Conan Doyle. Now, Sherlock Holmes as a character isn't really a classic that I've been super interested in at all in my life, so I feel like I have this really nice vintage classics edition though. It's just been sitting on my shelves for a while, that if I ever did feel the urge to pick up something by him, I don't know why, just him as character is never interested in me, but he is one that I do want to give a chance because I could read and completely like change my mind and be obsessed. And we're getting close to being almost done here. So next we have Wish Her Safe at Home by Stephen Benatar. This one is by NYRB Classics. I have a few of their editions on my shelves in various different areas. This one was definitely a cover buy for me. I can't really tell you guys what this one was about yet because I haven't read it yet. Then we have another one I haven't read, The Midwich Cuckoos by John Wyndham. I have a few John Wyndham books on my shelves already, and I just need to get around to reading them because I don't know if I like him as an author or not, but I think the covers that they chose for his books are really cool. This one is described as a classic tale of aliens in our midst, so I just need to get around to reading that hopefully this month. We'll see. I haven't read any of the rest of the books that I'm going to show you guys. I'll just say now. So the next one is All Things Austen, a concise encyclopedia of Austen's world. I think I got this one secondhand on like eBay or something, and this book is really cool. It goes into, it's like it says, it's an encyclopedia of all types of information, of everything you would want to know regarding Jane Austen and the times that she lived in and the world that her characters are set in. I feel like eventually I do want to reread all of Austen's books, but after I read this encyclopedia, because I feel like it'll give me more knowledge and understanding going into the rereads. So yeah, it's not something I plan on reading soon, but it's something I would like to eventually get to. Then we have one that's been sitting on my shelves far too long, and that's The Idiot by Elif Batuman. In this book, we're following Selin in the year 1995, and she's the daughter of Turkish immigrants arriving for her freshman year at Harvard. I think I really wanted to read this book, but also I have heard of a lot of people who read it and like weren't super impressed by it, so I think that's also kind of one of the reasons I've put it off a little bit, because I'm not sure if I'm gonna like it or not. We have a book by the lovely Toni Morrison, and this one is The Source of Self-Regard. These are all selected essays, speeches, and meditations by Toni Morrison, which I have been holding off on reading until I finish reading all. Well, you can't see it from right here, but I have a collection of some of her other novels that I was wanting to get to before I read these like shorter essays and stuff. And last but not least, we have Yours Cheerfully by AJ Pierce. This is a Waterstone signed edition, so it has this really cool typewriter sprayed edges on the sides. And this one was definitely a cover, spine buy for me, I guess you could say. But also when I read what it was about, it seemed really interesting. So it takes place in London in 1941. We're following Emmeline Lake as she's becoming a young wartime advice columnist. Her relationship with her boyfriend Charles, now stationed back in the UK, and her best friend Bunty, who's still reeling from the worst of the Blitz. So this one is definitely one I want to prioritize for this month because I just think it's so beautiful and I really want to get to this one. So now I'm going to put all the books back on the shelves, and they're going to be split by what I have read and what I haven't read. So of all of the pink books that I have, these are the ones that I've read. These are 14 books. Now I'll go ahead and put back the ones that I have not read yet. So the books I haven't read, there are 18 books on the shelf. So let's go ahead and talk about the books that I'm planning on reading for this month of January. So welcome if you are just here from the beginning of the timestamp that I directed you to. We're going to be talking about the books that I'm planning on reading for the month of January. So for the first part of January, I'm working on continuing some series that I've already been reading. And those are The Mad Ship by Robin Hobb. We have Children of Dune by Frank Herbert. And lastly, Adulthood Rights by Octavia E. Butler. So I know these books are going to take me at least the first week to probably third of the month to get through, especially the Mad Ship is very long. It's almost 1,000 pages, so I'm not going to be rushing my way through these. But once I finish these books, then I want to go ahead and try and get to as many of these pink ones that I have not read. And so I'll show you, I'm going to go ahead and pick out probably like 5 that I'm going to be prioritizing, and then if I can fit in more throughout the month, I'll just like kind of mood read from there. So of the 18 books that are living currently on this pink shelf that I haven't read yet, I was able to narrow down to 6 books that I want to prioritize for my TBR for this month. A lot of it is going to be dependent on what audiobooks I'm able to get through my library as well, but I know 2 for sure that I was able to check out was The Grace Year by Kim Liggett, which is the young adult dystopian book, and I was able to get the audiobook for Blow Your House Down by Gina Frangelo, which Counter Press was nice enough to send me last year that I need to finally get to. And this one I am a little bit confused about how this one was, because I thought it was, like I mentioned before, I thought it was a novel, but then it seemed like it might be essays. I don't know. I'll explain once I finish reading it. And then the other ones that I'm going to be prioritizing are The Idiot by Elif Batuman, Valley of the Dolls by Jacqueline Susan, Yours Cheerfully by AJ Pierce, the one with the nice typewriter sprayed edges. And then lastly, we have McSweeney's. This is issue number 63 from the Quarterly Literary Journal. So I believe that these are some of the thickest ones on this shelf, which I have left behind quite a few like smaller ones because I'm trying to make more room. So I'm hoping that if I read these books, if I don't like them and I want to get rid of them, it will help basically help me make more space on my shelves more quickly. But I will hopefully at least be able to read a couple more of the shorter books during the month if I have the time, like I said. So this stack of books here are the ones that I'm going to be attempting to read for the month of January. Quite a few here. I am filming this a little bit later in the month than I normally would like to. Hopefully this book series will be going up during the first week of the month every month until we get through all of the shelves. So this is going to be taking over a year. So it's a little bit daunting, but I am excited because there's so many good books I've been wanting to get to. The first week of the month I'm planning on devoting to series, and so I'll be continuing the next books in the series in February and so on. Congratulations if you made it this far in the video and through my first attempt to do something like this on my channel. I hope you enjoyed this deep dive into all of the pink books on my bookshelves. I'm excited to continue on with each shelf following. So I don't know if I'm going to go in order or if I'm going to kind of bounce around just depending on what I'm feeling like for the month. This shelf does have some nice books, but I'm thinking I'm going to go for next month. We're going to skip to the shelf below it because there's more books on there that I'm interested in getting to sooner. If you enjoy this series and you want me to continue on with this project, please, please, please definitely like this video. Let me know in the comments below. That really helps me to see that there's interest and that you guys want me to still continue to create these kinds of videos. I am really excited to take on this project. I'm a little bit nervous about it, but I think that it will be fun. It's been something I've been wanting to do now for a while, and I figured why not just jump into it. That's all the book talk I have for you guys today, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye!